Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Terra Nova, watching the massive alien space station grow larger on the main screen. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. This was humanity's first real chance to join the galactic community. And everything had to go perfectly, Captain. "We're getting their docking instructions now," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her position at the security station. She was a tough woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "They want us to use Docking Bay 7. Jake nodded and turned to the woman sitting in the chair next to him. Helen Carter was the best diplomat Earth had ever produced. She was in her 40s with gray hair and a calm face that never showed what she was really thinking. "Are you ready for this, Helen?" "As ready as anyone can be for meeting an empire that has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years," Helen replied. She was studying a datapad with information about Zephyrian customs. "Remember, Jake, they think we're primitive. We need to prove them wrong without making them angry." Dr. Kevin Barnes looked up from his science station. He was a thin man with glasses who got excited about everything related to alien life. "Captain, the energy readings from that station are incredible. Their technology is at least 500 years ahead of ours, maybe more. The Terra Nova was Earth's newest and best ship, but Jake knew it was nothing compared to what the aliens had. The Zephyrian Empire controlled most of the galaxy. They had invited humanity to send a small delegation after Earth had developed faster-than-light travel just 2 years ago. It was supposed to be an honor, but Jake suspected they were just curious about the new species. "All right, everyone," Jake said as they approached the docking bay. "We represent all of humanity today. Let's make a good impression." The docking process was smooth, though Jake noticed that alien ships in nearby bays were much larger and more advanced than the Terra Nova. When they stepped out of their ship, they were met by a group of Zephyrians. Jake had seen pictures, but meeting them in person was different. The Zephyrians were tall, about 8 feet high, with skin that looked like colored glass. Light seemed to move through their bodies, creating beautiful patterns. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their faces were long and narrow with large eyes that glowed softly. The leader of the group stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice sounded like musical notes. "I am Ambassador Nextar. Welcome to Zephyr Prime, humans. The Emperor has granted you an audience." Helen stepped forward and bowed slightly the way she had practiced. "We are honored by the Emperor's attention. I am Chief Diplomat Helen Carter, and this is Captain Jake Morrison of the starship Terra Nova." Ambassador Nextar looked at them for a long moment. Jake could not tell what the alien was thinking, but something in those glowing eyes made him uncomfortable. "Follow me. Do not touch anything, and speak only when spoken to." They walked through corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. The walls pulsed with soft light, and Jake could hear a low humming sound everywhere. Kevin was trying not to stare at everything, but Jake could see he was taking mental notes about the alien technology. "This place is amazing," Kevin whispered to Amy as they walked. "The walls seem to be growing and changing. I've never seen anything like it." "Keep your voice down," Amy whispered back, "and stay alert. Something feels off about this." Jake agreed with Amy's instincts. The Zephyrians they passed in the corridors all stopped to stare at the humans. Some pointed at them and made sounds that might have been laughter. Others looked at them like they were looking at insects. They entered a massive chamber that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling was hundreds of feet high, and the walls were covered in moving patterns of light. Hundreds of Zephyrians filled the space, all dressed in flowing robes that seemed to be made of the same crystal material as their skin. At the far end of the chamber was a throne unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. It was huge, maybe 30 feet tall, and seemed to be alive. Metal flowed like water across its surface, and crystals pulsed with different colors. Energy moved through it in patterns that hurt Jake's eyes to look at directly. Sitting on the throne was Emperor Vexthar the Eternal. He was larger than the other Zephyrians, and his skin was a deep blue color that sparkled like stars. When he looked at the human delegation, Jake felt like the alien could see right through him. "So these are the humans," the Emperor said. His voice was deeper than the other Zephyrians, and it echoed through the chamber. "Such small, short-lived creatures. How many years do you live, human captain?" Jake stepped forward. "About 80 years, Your Majesty, sometimes more." The Emperor made a sound that might have been laughter. 80 years. I have ruled this empire for over 3,000 years. Your entire species has only had space travel for 2 years. What could you possibly offer to our ancient civilization?" Helen moved forward carefully. "Your Majesty, humanity may be young, but we bring fresh perspectives and strong determination. We hope to learn from your wisdom and contribute what we can. Several Zephyrians in the crowd made musical sounds that Jake was starting to recognize as laughter. One of them, wearing more decorations than the others, stepped forward. Fresh perspectives? Your Majesty, these creatures still fight wars on their own planet. They poison their own air and water. What wisdom could they possibly have? This alien was clearly important. His skin was a golden color, and he moved with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Ambassador Nexstar had whispered that this was Lord Crixtall, one of the Emperor's closest advisors. Perhaps, Lord Crixtall continued, we should test their courage. After all, they claim to be brave explorers. Jake felt the mood in the room change. The Zephyrians were all looking at the humans now, and he could sense their amusement. They were like children who had found a new toy to play with. Emperor Vexithar leaned forward on his throne. An interesting idea, Lord Crixtall. What do you suggest? Well, Your Majesty, Lord Crixtall said, his glowing eyes fixed on Jake. If they are truly brave leaders, perhaps their captain would not mind experiencing the honor of approaching your throne. The chamber fell silent. Jake could feel Helen's tension beside him, and he saw Amy's hand move closer to her weapon. Kevin was staring at the throne with fascination and fear. Jake did not know what approaching the throne meant, but he could tell from the aliens' expressions that it was not going to be pleasant. Still, he was the captain and his crew was watching. More importantly, all of humanity was depending on him. I would be honored, Jake said clearly, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. Lord Crixtall's golden skin seemed to glow brighter as Jake accepted his challenge. The alien noble moved closer, his forearms gesturing gracefully as he spoke. How wonderful. The human captain shows courage. But perhaps we should make this more interesting. Emperor Vexthar shifted on his massive throne, and Jake could see curiosity in those ancient eyes. What do you have in mind, Lord Crixtall? Well, Your Majesty, Lord Crixtall said, his voice carrying easily through the crystal chamber. This human claims to be a leader. Perhaps he should experience what real leadership feels like. Why not let him sit upon the celestial throne itself? The reaction was immediate. Every Zephyrian in the chamber began making musical sounds of laughter. The noise grew louder and louder until it became a symphony of amusement that echoed off the crystal walls. Some aliens were laughing so hard they had to support themselves with their multiple arms. Jake felt his face grow red, but he kept his expression calm. Beside him, Helen grabbed his arm. Jake, don't do this, she whispered urgently. We don't know what that throne does. Dr. Kevin Barnes was already scanning the throne with a small device he had hidden in his pocket. His face went pale as he looked at the readings. Captain, he said quietly, the energy levels coming from that thing are off the charts. It's not just a chair. It's some kind of advanced technology. Amy moved closer to Jake's other side. Her hand was resting on her weapon and her eyes were scanning the crowd of laughing aliens. This feels like a trap, Captain. They're setting you up for something. But Jake was watching Emperor Vexthar. The ancient ruler was not laughing like the others. Instead, he was studying Jake with those glowing eyes as if trying to decide something important. You find this amusing, Lord Crixtall? The Emperor said slowly. But do you understand what you are suggesting? Lord Crixtall's laughter faded slightly. Of course, Your Majesty. The celestial throne has rejected every pretender who has tried to claim it for 3,000 years. Some have been thrown across the room. Others have been burned by its energy. One fool from the Rigel system was completely disintegrated. The Emperor nodded. Indeed. The throne chooses its occupant according to laws we do not fully understand. It accepted me after a century of preparation and testing. Before me, it sat empty for 200 years because no one was worthy. Jake felt his crew tense beside him, but he kept his attention on the Emperor. Your Majesty, if this is some kind of test, I'm willing to try. But I want to know what I'm getting into. Emperor Vexithar stood up from the throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. The celestial throne is not just a seat of power, human. It is a living artifact older than our civilization. Legend says it was built by the first empire that ruled this galaxy, long before the Zephyrians came to power. The Emperor began walking down the steps that led to his throne. As he moved, Jake could see that the throne continued to pulse and glow even without anyone sitting on it. The throne judges those who approach it. It looks into their mind, their heart, their very soul. Only those it deems worthy can sit upon it without harm. And those it finds unworthy? Helen asked. though Jake could tell she did not really want to know the answer. Die, the Emperor said simply. The throne's power is absolute. It cannot be fooled or bargained with. It sees the truth of what you are. Lord Crickstal stepped forward again, his golden skin practically glowing with excitement. Which is why this will be so entertaining, Your Majesty. Humans are primitive, selfish creatures. They fight among themselves constantly. They destroy their own planet for profit. Surely the throne will see through any pretense this one might have. More laughter filled the chamber. Jake could see that many of the Zephyrians were now placing bets on what would happen to him. Some seemed to think he would be thrown across the room. Others believed the throne would simply refuse to respond to him at all, which would be humiliating but not fatal. Kevin grabbed Jake's arm. Captain, please reconsider. My scans show that the throne is generating more energy than our entire ship. We have no idea what it might do to you. Amy nodded. This isn't worth it, Jake. Let's just leave. We can tell Earth that the Zephyrians weren't interested in diplomacy. But Jake was thinking about more than just himself. He thought about Earth struggling to find its place among the stars. He thought about humanity, always being told they were too young, too primitive, too violent to matter. Maybe this was their chance to prove everyone wrong. Your Majesty, Jake said, stepping forward, I accept Lord Crickstal's challenge. If your throne judges based on truth, then let it see what humanity really is. Emperor Vexthar studied Jake for a long moment. You realize you will likely die? The throne has rejected beings far older and more experienced than you. I understand the risk, Jake replied, but someone has to speak for humanity. If that someone is me, then so be it. The Emperor nodded slowly. Very well. But let me warn you, human captain. The throne does not just judge your actions. It judges your thoughts, your intentions, your deepest beliefs. If there is any darkness in your heart, any selfishness or cruelty, it will find it. Jake looked back at his crew one more time. Helen's face was tight with worry. Kevin was still staring at his scanner, shaking his head. Amy looked like she wanted to tackle him and drag him back to their ship. I'll be all right, he told them, hoping it was true. The crowd of Zephyrians parted as Jake walked toward the throne. The laughter died down, replaced by an expectant silence. Even the sound of the crystal walls seemed to fade away. As Jake got closer to the throne, he could feel its power washing over him like heat from a fire. The metal surfaces flowed faster, and the crystals pulsed brighter. Whatever technology powered this thing, it was responding to his presence. Any last words, human? Lord Crickstal called out, his voice full of cruel amusement. Jake paused at the bottom of the steps leading up to the throne. He could feel the eyes of every alien in the chamber watching him. Behind him, he knew his crew was holding their breath. Just one thing, Jake said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for every human who dreams of walking among the stars. He began climbing the steps toward the celestial throne. Each step Jake took toward the throne felt like walking through thick water. The air around the ancient artifact seemed to vibrate with power, and he could hear a low humming sound that seemed to come from inside his own head. The flowing metal surfaces of the throne moved faster as he approached, creating patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. Behind him, the chamber had fallen completely silent. Even Lord Crickstal had stopped making his cruel comments. Jake could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him, waiting to see how he would die. When Jake reached the final step, he paused. The throne towered above him, easily twice his height and covered in technology he could not begin to understand. Crystals the size of his head pulsed with different colors, and streams of energy flowed between them like liquid lightning. The seat itself seemed to be made of metal that moved like it was alive. Go ahead, human, Emperor Vexthar called from behind him. The throne is waiting. Jake took a deep breath and reached out to touch the arm of the throne. The moment his fingers made contact with the flowing metal, everything changed. Light exploded across the throne's surface, brighter than anything Jake had ever seen. The crystals began to pulse in perfect rhythm, and the humming sound grew louder until it filled the entire chamber. Energy cascaded down the throne in waves of blue and gold, creating patterns that seemed to dance in the air around Jake. But instead of pain or rejection, Jake felt something incredible. The throne was welcoming him. He could sense its ancient intelligence reaching out to his mind, not to judge him, but to understand him. It was like being examined by something impossibly old and wise, but the examination was gentle, curious. The Zephyrians in the chamber began to murmur in confusion. This was not what they had expected. Emperor Vexthar stepped forward, his glowing eyes wide with shock. Impossible, Lord Crixtal whispered, his golden skin flickering with uncertainty. The throne should have rejected him by now. Jake could feel the throne systems awakening around him. Holographic displays appeared in the air, showing star maps and information in languages he had never seen but somehow understood. The throne was downloading knowledge directly into his mind, sharing secrets that had been hidden for thousands of years. Sit, a voice said inside his head. It was not his own voice, but it felt familiar somehow. Sit and learn the truth. Jake lowered himself onto the throne seat and the chamber erupted in chaos. The moment Jake sat down, the throne's full power activated. Light shot out from the crystals, creating a dome of energy around him. The flowing metal of the throne began to reshape itself, fitting perfectly to his human form. Holographic interfaces appeared everywhere, showing him the location of every star system in the galaxy, every planet, every space station. Information flooded into Jake's mind faster than he could process it. He learned about the true history of the galaxy, about the ancient race that had built the throne millions of years ago. They had been called the Architects, and they had designed the throne to seek out leaders who could unite different species in peace. The Zephyrians had not been chosen by the throne. They had simply taken control when the last true emperor died thousands of years ago. Emperor Vexthar had been able to sit on the throne, but only because it had been dormant, waiting for someone worthy to awaken it. No, Emperor Vexthar shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. This cannot be happening. I am the emperor. I have ruled for 3,000 years. But the throne was already responding to Jake in ways it had never responded to anyone else. Ancient systems came online throughout the palace, throughout the entire star system. Military databases that had been locked for millennia opened themselves to Jake's mind. He could see the location of every ship in the Imperial fleet, every weapon, every defensive system. Dr. Kevin Barnes was staring at his scanner with amazement. Captain, the energy readings are incredible. That throne is connected to technology all across the galaxy. It's like a command center for the entire empire. Helen and Amy rushed forward as the dome of energy around Jake began to fade. Jake, are you all right? Helen called out. Jake opened his eyes and looked at his crew. He felt different, changed in ways he could not explain. The throne had shared its knowledge with him, but it had also made him its guardian. He was still human, still Jake Morrison from Earth, but he was also something more now. I'm fine, he said, though his voice sounded different even to himself. Better than fine, actually. Lord Crixtal stepped forward, his forearms shaking with rage. This is a trick. Humans cannot be chosen by the throne. They are primitive, violent creatures, are they? Jake asked, standing up from the throne. As he did, information displays followed him, floating in the air around his body. Or maybe you've never really understood what the throne was looking for. Emperor Vexthar approached slowly, his ancient face showing confusion and fear. How is this possible? I was tested by the throne. It accepted me. It tolerated you, Jake said, the truth coming to him through the throne's shared knowledge. The architects designed it to wait for someone who could truly unite the galaxy. Someone who understood that strength comes from cooperation, not domination. The throne pulsed behind Jake, confirming his words. New holographic displays appeared, showing the true state of the empire. Jake could see rebellions on dozens of worlds, species that had been oppressed for centuries, trade routes that had been disrupted by corruption and greed. The empire is dying, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the crystal chamber. You've ruled through fear for so long that you've forgotten how to inspire loyalty. Half your member species are planning to rebel. The other half are too afraid to tell you the truth about what's happening in their systems. Several Zephyrians in the crowd began talking nervously among themselves. They had not known about the rebellions, but Jake could see from their expressions that his words rang true. Lies, Lord Crixtal snarled. Even if the throne has been fooled by some human trick, you have no right to rule. You know nothing about governing a galactic empire. Jake turned to look at the golden-skinned alien noble. The throne's knowledge flowed through his mind, showing him Lord Crixtal's true nature. The alien had been stealing from the Imperial treasury for decades, selling weapons to pirates and oppressing entire star systems for his own profit. I know more than you think, Jake said quietly. For instance, I know about your private fleet hidden in the Nexus system. I know about the slave markets you've been running on the Outer Rim. I know about the bribes you've taken from crime syndicates. Lord Crixtal's golden skin flickered and dimmed. Around the chamber, other Zephyrians began backing away from him as the truth of his crimes became clear. Emperor Vexthar looked from Jake to Lord Crixtal, his ancient mind struggling to understand what was happening. If the throne has truly chosen you, he said slowly, then by law you are the rightful emperor. No, Jake said firmly. I'm not your emperor. I'm something different. He turned to face the entire chamber, his voice growing stronger as the throne's power flowed through him. The age of empire is over. It's time for something new. Something better. Warning alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the palace. The holographic displays around Jake flashed red as urgent messages appeared. What's happening? Amy demanded, her hand moving to her weapon. Jake read the displays quickly, his enhanced understanding letting him process the information instantly. Lord Crixtal isn't the only one who's been planning betrayal. There are Zephyrian fleets moving toward the capital right now. They're going to attack rather than accept a human ruler. Emperor Vexthar's glowing eyes widened in shock. My own people would attack the throne world. Some of them, Jake confirmed, watching as more red warning lights appeared on his displays. It looks like about half the Imperial fleet is refusing to accept the throne's choice. They're declaring this whole thing invalid. The chamber erupted in panicked voices as Zephyrians began arguing among themselves. Some demanded that Jake be removed from the throne by force. Others insisted that the throne's judgment could not be questioned. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The throne had chosen him, but that choice had just started a civil war that could tear the galaxy apart. The palace shook as the first enemy ships entered the star system. Through the throne's connection to the planetary defense network, Jake could see everything happening in the space around Zephyr Prime. Hundreds of Zephyrian warships were approaching, their weapons charged and ready for battle. Admiral Zexmore is leading the attack, Jake said, reading the tactical displays that floated around him. He's declaring that no alien species can rule the Empire, especially not humans. Emperor Vexthar looked older than his 3,000 years as he watched his empire tear itself apart. Zexmore has been my most trusted military commander for 8 centuries. If he has turned against the throne, then we are truly lost. Not lost, Jake said firmly. Changed. The throne is showing me things, Vexthar. The real history of this galaxy. Your people were never meant to rule alone. Through the ancient artifact's vast memory banks, Jake accessed records that had been hidden for millennia. The true story of the galaxy's past unfolded in his mind like a book being opened. He saw the architects, the race that had built the throne, and learned about their vision for galactic civilization. The architects believed that diversity was strength, Jake explained as another wave of enemy ships appeared on the tactical display. They built the throne to find leaders who could unite different species, not control them. Your empire has been doing everything backward. Helen Carter stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over even in the crisis. Jake, can you use the throne's systems to communicate with the attacking fleet? Maybe we can negotiate instead of fighting. I can try, Jake said, activating the throne's communication arrays. His voice was broadcast across the entire star system, reaching every ship, every space station, every inhabited planet. This is Jake Morrison speaking from the Celestial Throne. I'm calling for an immediate ceasefire. Admiral Zexmore's response came quickly, his voice full of anger and disgust. A human dares to command Zephyrian forces? This is exactly the humiliation we came to prevent. Surrender now, alien, and we might allow you to return to your primitive planet. I'm not your enemy, Admiral, Jake replied calmly. And neither is humanity. The throne chose me because it sees something in humans that you've been missing. We specialize in bringing different groups together. As if to prove his point, Jake activated communication channels that reached beyond the Zephyrian fleet. The throne's ancient systems connected him to species across the galaxy, many of whom had been oppressed by the Empire for centuries. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Captains from dozens of different species began transmitting messages of support. The bird-like aviacs, the crystalline geodians, the energy beings known as the Flux, even some younger Zephyrian commanders who had grown tired of the old ways. This is Captain Kretak of the Aviax Defense Force, came one transmission. Our people have suffered under Zephyrian rule for 200 years. If this human offers real change, we will support him. The Geodian mining colonies pledge our loyalty to the new throne, came another voice. We have been slaves long enough. Dr. Kevin Barnes was frantically taking readings from the throne with his portable scanner. Captain, this is incredible. The throne isn't just a command center. It's a communication hub that connects to every major civilization in the galaxy. You can talk to anyone, anywhere. Amy Rodriguez was coordinating with the palace's security forces, but even she looked amazed by what was happening. Jake, we're getting reports from all over the galaxy. Dozens of species are declaring their support for you. Some are already moving their fleets to help defend the capital. But Admiral Zexmore was not impressed by the show of alien support. If anything, it seemed to make him angrier. Do you see? He broadcast to his fleet. The human has already corrupted our empire with his alien allies. This is exactly what we must prevent. The Admiral's fleet opened fire on the outer defense platforms around Zephyr Prime. Massive energy beams tore through space, destroying installations that had protected the capital for thousands of years. The palace shook again as debris from the destroyed platforms rained down on the planet's upper atmosphere. Vexthar, Jake said urgently. I need you to help me access the throne's defensive systems. I can see them in the displays, but I don't know how to activate them properly. The former emperor hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. If the throne has truly chosen you, then you have the right to defend it. Place your hand on the central crystal and think about protection. Jake did as instructed, and the palace's defensive systems came online with a power that shook the entire building. Energy shields appeared around the planet, deflecting the Admiral's attacks. Ancient weapon platforms that had been dormant for millennia suddenly activated, emerging from hidden locations throughout the star system. Impossible. Admiral Zexmore's voice crackled over the communication system. Those defenses were destroyed in the Civil War 1,000 years ago. Nothing was destroyed, Jake replied as he learned to control the throne's military systems. It was all hidden, waiting for someone the throne trusted to use it properly. But Jake also had access to something more important than weapons. Through the throne's connection to the Galactic Communication Network, he could see the true state of the Empire. Rebellions were breaking out on dozens of worlds as oppressed species seized the opportunity to throw off Zephyrian rule. Helen, Jake called to his diplomatic officer, I'm sending you intelligence about rebellion movements across the galaxy. Can you establish contact with their leaders? Helen moved to a secondary console that had appeared near the throne. Already working on it, Jake. The throne's translation systems are incredible. I can communicate with species we've never even heard of. As Helen worked to coordinate with rebel forces, Amy was organizing the defense of the palace itself. Lord Crystal had disappeared during the chaos, but other Zephyrian nobles were still in the chamber, arguing among themselves about what to do. Some of them want to surrender to Admiral Zexmore, Amy reported. Others are talking about accepting you as emperor, and a few are discussing whether they should just kill you and claim the throne was malfunctioning. Jake could hear the arguments going on around him, but his attention was focused on the larger picture. Through the throne's sensors, he could see that the galaxy was in chaos. The Admiral's rebellion had been the spark that lit a fire that had been building for centuries. Kevin, Jake called to his science officer, can you figure out how the throne's systems work? I need to understand what I'm dealing with here. Dr. Barnes was practically glowing with excitement as he studied the alien technology. Jake, this thing is beyond anything we've ever seen. It's not just connected to the communication and defense networks. It's tied into the transportation systems, the trade networks, even the environmental controls for entire planets. Whoever controls this throne literally controls the infrastructure of galactic civilization. That was when Jake realized the true scope of what had happened. The celestial throne was not just a symbol of power. It was the actual control center for everything that kept galactic society functioning, and now he was responsible for all of it. Admiral Zexmore, Jake broadcast across the fleet communication channels, you're fighting the wrong battle. This isn't about humans ruling Zephyrians. It's about building something better for everyone. Lies, the Admiral replied. You seek to replace our empire with human domination. No, Jake said firmly. I seek to replace your empire with something that actually works. Through the throne's vast information networks, Jake began broadcasting the truth about the empire's failures. He showed the communication logs that revealed corruption among the nobility. He displayed the economic data that proved how the empire's policies were destroying entire star systems. He revealed the military reports that showed how many rebellions had been covered up over the centuries. "Look at what your empire has become," Jake told Admiral Zexmore and his fleet. "Half the galaxy hates you. The other half is afraid of you. Is that really the legacy you want to fight for?" For the first time, the Admiral's communications fell silent. Around the star system, Jake could see some of the attacking ships slowing down, their captains apparently reconsidering their orders. But Admiral Zexmore was not ready to give up. "Even if our empire has problems," he finally responded, "they can be fixed. We do not need alien leadership." "You've had 3,000 years to fix them," Jake replied. "How much longer do you think the galaxy will wait?" The answer came not from Admiral Zexmore, but from dozens of other voices across the communication network. Species after species began broadcasting their own stories of oppression, their own demands for change, their own declarations of support for the new leadership. Jake realized that he was no longer just dealing with a military rebellion. He was presiding over the birth of a completely new kind of galactic government. The question was whether it would be born through negotiation or through the biggest war the galaxy had ever seen. The battle for Zephyr Prime raged for 3 days, but it was unlike any war the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of just military ships fighting in space, it became a struggle between two different ideas of what galactic civilization should be. Admiral Zexmore's forces were powerful, but they were fighting alone. Every hour brought new ships from other species to defend the capital. The bird-like aviacs sent their swift fighters. The rock people called Geodians brought their massive mining ships converted into warships. Even some human vessels arrived, small but determined ships from Earth's growing fleet. "Captain," Amy Rodriguez reported from her security station, "we now have over 400 ships from 30 different species defending the planet. It's the largest alliance fleet in galactic history." But Jake was learning that military power was not the most important tool the throne offered him. The ancient artifact's real strength was its ability to coordinate and communicate across vast distances instantly. He could speak directly to planetary governors, trade union leaders, rebel commanders, and ordinary citizens throughout the galaxy. "I'm getting reports from everywhere," Helen Carter said as she worked at her diplomatic console. "Oppressed colonies are declaring independence. Trade guilds are refusing to work with the old imperial system. Even some Zephyrian worlds are demanding new leadership." Dr. Kevin Barnes looked up from his study of the throne's systems. "Jake, I think I understand what's happening. The throne isn't just showing you how to command the empire. It's showing you how to transform it into something completely different." Jake nodded as he felt the ancient artifact's knowledge flowing through his mind. The architects had not built the throne to create an empire at all. They had built it to create a federation of equals, with the throne serving as a neutral mediator rather than a ruling authority. "Vexthar," Jake called to the former emperor, who had been quietly watching the chaos unfold around his crystal chamber. "The throne is showing me the original design specifications. Your people have been using it wrong for thousands of years." Emperor Vexthar approached the throne slowly, his glowing eyes reflecting the light from its flowing metal surfaces. "What do you mean?" "The architects never intended for one species to rule over all the others," Jake explained. "They built this as a coordination center, a place where representatives from every species could work together to solve problems too big for any one world to handle alone." The implications of this revelation were staggering. If Jake was right, then the entire structure of galactic government needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. The Zephyrian Empire would have to be replaced with something that had never existed before. Admiral Zexmore's voice crackled over the communication system, interrupting Jake's thoughts. "Human, I offer you one final chance to surrender. My fleet is prepared to destroy the capital rather than allow alien rule." Jake looked at the tactical displays floating around him. The Admiral's forces were badly outnumbered now, but they were still powerful enough to cause massive destruction if they attacked the planet directly. Millions of innocent beings lived on Zephyr Prime, both Zephyrian and alien. "Kevin," Jake said quietly, "show me the throne's weapon systems. All of them." Dr. Barnes's scanner revealed the terrifying truth. The celestial throne was connected to defensive weapons powerful enough to destroy entire star systems, ancient orbital platforms that could tear apart planets, energy projectors that could disable every ship in a fleet simultaneously. The architects had built the ultimate deterrent to protect their coordination center. I could end this war in minutes, Jake murmured, feeling the power of those weapons calling to him. I could destroy Admiral Zexmore's entire fleet without any risk to our own people. Amy looked up from her station with concern. Jake, you're not seriously considering that, are you? The throne is offering me absolute power, Jake replied, his hand hovering over the control interfaces. I could force peace on the entire galaxy. No one would dare oppose me with weapons like these. Helen Carter stepped away from her console and approached the throne. Jake, listen to yourself. That's exactly the kind of thinking that corrupted the Zephyrian Empire in the first place. Power without restraint, control without consent. Jake stared at the weapon controls for a long moment. He could feel the throne's ancient systems waiting for his command. All he had to do was think the word, and Admiral Zexmore would be nothing but scattered atoms in space. Instead, Jake activated the communication array and broadcast his voice across the entire star system. Admiral Zexmore, this is Jake Morrison speaking from the Celestial Throne. I want to show you something. Jake used the throne's holographic projectors to display the true weapon capabilities of the capital's defenses. He showed the Admiral exactly how powerful the ancient systems were, how easily they could destroy his entire fleet. I have the power to end this war right now, Jake continued. I could destroy every ship that opposes me without losing a single ally. But I'm not going to do that. A stunned silence filled the communication channels. Admiral Zexmore's voice, when it finally came, was confused and suspicious. Why, if you have such power, why not use it? Because that's not what leadership means, Jake replied. Real leaders don't rule through fear. They rule through trust, and trust has to be earned, not forced. Jake deactivated the weapon systems, deliberately removing his access to them. Around the throne chamber, several Zephyrian nobles gasped in shock. Even Emperor Vexthar looked amazed. I'm making you an offer, Admiral, Jake continued. Land your ships. Come to the palace. Let's talk about what kind of galaxy we want to build together. You would trust me not to kill you? Admiral Zexmore asked. I'm trusting you to be the honorable Zephyrian officer that Vexthar believed you were for 8 centuries. Jake replied. The choice is yours. For several long minutes, nothing happened. The Admiral's fleet continued to orbit the planet, weapons powered but not firing. Jake could see through the throne's sensors that debates were raging aboard the attacking ships as officers argued about what to do. Finally, Admiral Zexmore's personal ship broke away from the fleet and approached the palace landing platform. The ancient Zephyrian commander was tall even by his species' standards, with skin that shimmered like silver and eyes that held the wisdom of centuries. You are either very brave or very foolish. Human, Admiral Zexmore said as he entered the throne chamber. Probably both, Jake admitted with a slight smile, but I'm also determined to find a better way forward. Jake stood up from the throne and walked down to meet the Admiral on equal ground. I don't want to be your emperor, Admiral. I don't want anyone to be emperor. The age of empires is over. Then what do you propose? Admiral Zexmore asked. Jake gestured to the holographic displays that showed the current state of the galaxy. Rebellions, trade disputes, resource conflicts, territorial arguments. I propose we stop trying to rule the galaxy and start trying to organize it. The throne was designed to coordinate, not control. Over the following hours, Jake used the throne's communication systems to organize the first Galactic Council in history. Representatives from every major species were invited to participate, not as subjects of an empire, but as equals in a federation. The Zephyrians would keep their homeworld and their local systems, but they would no longer rule over other species. The Aviacs would govern their own territory. The Geodians would control their mining operations. Humans would have their voice in galactic affairs, despite being the youngest spacefaring species. It won't be easy, Jake warned as representatives from across the galaxy gathered in person and through holographic projection. Democracy is messy. Cooperation is hard work, but it's better than war. Emperor Vexthar, now simply a senior representative from the Zephyrian worlds, nodded slowly. You may be right, human. Perhaps it is time for my people to learn humility. Admiral Zexmore, who had agreed to serve as military coordinator for the new Federation, looked at Jake with something approaching respect. I still do not understand how the throne chose you, but I begin to see why it did. As the first session of the Galactic Council began, Jake took his seat on the Celestial Throne one final time, but now it served a different purpose. Instead of a seat of imperial power, it had become what the architects had always intended, a tool for bringing diverse peoples together in peace. Jake Morrison, the human captain who had started this journey as a joke for alien amusement, had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Not an emperor, but a coordinator. Not a ruler, but a bridge between worlds. And in the years that followed, as the Galactic Federation grew and prospered, beings throughout the galaxy would remember the day when a human taught them that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to unite. The throne had chosen well,